Somebody who truly believes in you can change your entire future. Rowing is the only sport where you cross the finish line backwards. I'm in the business of building character, not about teaching people how to row.
Regret comes from not putting that effort in.
You learn who you want to have in your life, and you have to act on it. Now, we can't control outcome, right? We can only control our process. No matter how much we want to, we can't control anyone else but ourselves.
What's up, guys? Thank you for joining me. So today I sit down with my very special guest, Shane Farmer from San Diego, California. Shane has created one of the most popular, most successful online rowing companies in the world, Dark Horse Rowing. And I got a chance to sit down with him and talk about his origin story of how he got into this world of strength and conditioning. One of the most fun conversations, inspiring talks that I've had on this podcast. Talk with Shane about how he came from humble background of not being an athletic kid into finding crew in college after missing a baseball tryout, which eventually got him into being a champion in sport, going into the CrossFit world with Invictus, which eventually led him into be able to teach worldwide the sport of rowing, where he founded Dark Horse Rowing, has been doing that for the last years. So it was absolutely a blast to connect with Shane. This conversation absolutely flew by. I know you'll get a ton of value out of it. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the inside.
All right, let's get this rolling. Shane, it's great to meet you, man.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I was excited. We got connected through a mutual friend, Eric Malzone from the Future of Fitness, who is one of my favorite people to listen to. He's got a great podcast. So I'm glad he connected us. This is going to be great. I'm excited to learn about you.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, I've known Eric for quite some time and had the pleasure of being on his podcast, and we've since had the ability to work together and, him connecting us. And I'm excited to be able to chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so Dark Horse Rowing. I'm excited to talk about, the work that you do with rowing. I mentioned before online, I had one of my first experiences was working with a big high school crew team. So got really into the world of rowing for a bit. And I know all the work that you've done of building up your company, but really getting in from the CrossFit side of it as well. I know the journey is really interesting. So before we dive right into the rowing side of it, would love to just learn a little bit more about you and how you got into this field, because correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of stumbled into the rowing world because you missed a baseball tryout. Is that right?
Yep. Nailed it. Yeah. That was, I had a burgeoning, club baseball career going on at my first college, which was Western State College of Colorado. So I'd gone there with no academic hopes. I was a terrible student. And I thought I was going to be a ski bum the rest of my life, frankly, because it's a mountain college. And so I was going to go and do that for the rest of my life. And I went into the club fair one day and I saw the club baseball team. And I was like, I haven't played baseball in 2 years because I'd quit in high school. I'm going to keep walking myself back here until until my birth. But I was incredibly slow. I was like a nothing athlete in high school. I love sports, absolutely love sports, but I was of no mention on any sport at any level. And in fact, you could always tell when I was running the base path because my footprints did this, I like waddled my way down the base path. And, but I loved baseball. Like it was, it was a sport that I'd always loved. But I was so slow. And so I quit after my sophomore year of high school and joined track. I was like, well, if I'm slow, then I guess I should go tackle the thing that I'm bad at, which is running. So let me go join track and field. And so I quit baseball also because I was like, and I'm clearly never going to make varsity. So, let me go try something else. So I jumped over to track and ran for 2 years. And so I lost out on a couple of years of baseball. And so when I found this club team, I was like, that'd be kind of cool to get involved again. And so I did that, ended up transferring schools. And at that point, I didn't know much about the University of San Diego where I was transferring to. Honestly, it was the only school that still had open enrollment when I chose to transfer. And so I just lucked out that it was an amazing school. And I got there and I was like, well, I'll try out for the baseball team. They have a varsity team, which means that they're, probably pretty decent. Little did I know they were like top 25 in the country. Wow, so, yeah. I was like going to try and walk on to
I got it. Yeah, I'm good.
From a club team playing in the middle of, the Colorado mountains to like a top 25 team in the country. So, needless to say, I didn't do my research because I was, 19 or whatever at the time, maybe 20, and missed tryouts. I just didn't even show because I was transferring and I hadn't asked. that'd probably be a good place to start. And so I walked into the coach's office the day after tryouts. I was devastated. I was like, Coach, I missed, like, I'm so sorry. I was a transfer, what can I at least like throw a workout for your pitching coaches or something? And he was like, better luck next year, kid. And I was devastated, crawled my way back to my dorm. And the guy across the hall from me had been recruited to row. He was from Hawaii. And he was like, well, you're tall and lanky. You should, do you want to like stay in a sport? And I was like, I guess. And he went, you should try rowing. And I thought, I'd always seen it in the Olympics and like I saw it every 4 years. And I was like, because I'm from rural Minnesota, so I didn't grow up around rowing. It's a very, it's like a elite sport.
Yes.
And so, we're surrounded by cows and cornfields. Rowing never even crossed my mind in school. And I was like, well, sure, why not? I'm here. Is it going to cost me anything? And he's like, no, paid for by the school. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll show up. And tried out. And it was the first thing I'd ever found that I was naturally good at. And because like I said, I'd loved sports my whole life, but I was terrible at them. I was I wasn't coordinated. I hadn't grown into my body yet. Wasn't incredibly kinesthetically aware. I wasn't incredibly strong. Wasn't fast. So I didn't really have anything going for me. And I remember, I'm going to take up the whole podcast just talking about my background.
Please keep going. Yeah.
I have this very distinct, this vivid memory of as I was leaving Colorado when I knew that I was leaving Western State College of Colorado. I didn't know if I'd been accepted into the University of San Diego yet, but what I did know is that I wasn't going to come back to Colorado. And so I had sold everything that wouldn't fit in the back of my car. I got into my car and I had secured a job at a hospital down in Mexico for the summer and just south of the border of San Diego. And so I was going to live in Mexico for the summer, work in this hospital, and wait to find out if I had been accepted to USD because I had been waitlisted because I applied so late. And I distinctly remember as I was leaving Gunnison, Colorado, I'm driving out of town. Tears are streaming down my face because I'm like 19. I don't know where I'm going in my life. Like everything is up in the air. If everything I own is packed in this car. I'm going west and I don't know where I'm going. And I'm like still operating off of a paper map. And so I'm just like in tears and I'm like talking to who knows who, just like talking out loud. And I remember vividly having this thought of, wherever I'm going, please let me find something that I'm good at, because I had been a terrible student. I had been a sub-average athlete. And I was like, I'm failing at life. I'm dumb. I'm not a good athlete. What do I have going for me? Like I'd never had a teacher like believe in me so much that they, like took me under their wing and were like, no, listen, it's just about, you have to learn how to be a student.
Right.
And so I'd never had, until I got to Colorado, that was how all of a sudden my grades improved. I went from a 2.5 high school GPA to a 3.8 in college because I got to choose what I was studying. And I had some teachers that were like, you're not an idiot. You just need to learn how to study better. And I was like,
yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm not an idiot. Like, wow. All of a sudden, like the sky's a little clearer. It's amazing what teachers can do for you, right? Like somebody who truly believes in you can change your entire future. So I'm driving out of town and I just have this thought, like wherever I go, please let me find the thing that I'm a natural at, because I've never found that. And just let me find that. And I guess however you want to think that those things connected themselves, I guess that I found that with rowing.
Right. When the student is ready, right?
Yeah, exactly. I went and lived in Mexico for the summer. I was the grunt in a lab in a hospital down in Rosarito, Mexico, sifting through people's poop every single day. That was my job. I would look at their stool samples every morning. That was my job. It was horrible, but I was in Mexico. I was like, well, this is a life adventure. That's for sure. And, and then I found out in like July or early August that I'd been accepted for like a month and a half later. I was like, all right, I'm
Oh.
going to San Diego. Fantastic. Like, I guess I know my next step. And I got there and, then things kind of found their way to rowing. And so that was how I landed in rowing.
Okay. What was it you mentioned? Liking sports and really enjoying them, but not being good at them at all, which for a lot of kids, I think would just completely just say, this is not my thing. And you just lose interest from there. What was it about sports that you really loved, even though it wasn't something that you found? Was it the competition of it? Was it the team, or like, what was it? Is there one thing, or is it kind of probably like multivariant?
I've worked to pinpoint that in my adult life. And I don't know that I've learned what it was. Because I have kids of my own now, and I'm like, how do I instill in them my feelings about sports?
Right.
And I truly don't know. I remember as a 6 or 7-year-old trying to get my dad to tell me his athletic stories when he was a kid. My dad was not an athletic guy, nor was my mom. I mean, my mom's fit and my dad's, reasonable. I mean, he's just average. Like, he's not incredibly fit, but he's not unhealthy. He's not unhealthy. So it wasn't like I had some iconic parent who was, doing crazy stuff. And I was like trying to live up to that. But I remember constantly asking my dad, like, Dad, tell me about, what sports were you in? He's like, well, I like played middle school basketball. And I was like, oh, well, were you great at it? And he was like, no, I was growing
pulling
up
at any thread. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I was living in rural Nebraska. Like, no, I wasn't very good at it. I just played basketball because, that's what all the boys did. Right. And, so I truly don't know. I was obsessed with sport. I've always loved it. And it almost seemed like it didn't matter what it was that I was doing, as long as I got to be involved in something. And to this day, that continues. I can happily jump into a regatta, which, I'll be doing a month from now. I'll be racing at a regatta here in San Diego. And probably a month and a half after that, I'll be racing a high rocks race in Los Angeles. Like, I just love competition, adventure, fitness. Like, it's all fun to me. If you want to go play catch in the park, I'm always game. Like, yeah, absolutely. Let me grab my mitt. Let's go play. Yeah. I love riding bikes. I have like my bike back here. I throw my kids on the back anytime I can, and we just tool around town. Like, I just want to take them I just want to do active things.
Right.
That's always been in my nature. So
okay.
I wish I had a better answer.
Oh, I think it's perfect. It's, it's funny because baseball was my first love first. I was, my father was a great basketball player. We played basketball, but then baseball season came around. It was something different. Yeah. And I found from baseball, such an attention to detail type sport. It's like so much game within the game. So I found the enjoyment of training and kind of the progression of getting in the weight room and stuff was always something that appealed to me on there. So I think it's something with baseball too, which there's almost there's a comparison in that, I believe, with people who get into the world of training and fitness a lot more. I've seen a lot of them come from enjoying some aspect of baseball.
Do you find, because I think I do you find that there's something very visceral to many of the elements of baseball, not necessarily the sport itself, but the smell of the leather, the pop of a ball in a glove, the crunch of cleats on dirt? Like, is that a piece of it for you?
It is. It's, growing up in New York, it's, we have seasons. So it comes from winter to spring. So you smell that grass. You like finally get outside. Those early baseball games when it's still 30 degrees outside and you hit the ball on the wrong end of the bat and your hands shake for about a day. But it's something too. It's, it's a team sport, but everything is played individually with action. It's like you have 9 guys who are in the lineup, but when it's your turn up to bat, nobody else can help you at that time. But knowing that you have a team around you, where like most other sports in team, there needs to be a lot more gelling in there, where it's like, where one guy really can, change something, a pitcher can be on. But it is a weird thing with baseball, with those added elements of it. I don't know. There's something to the smell of the ball, like the grip, it's there's nothing going on for like ever. And then all of a sudden the ball's in play and everything happens in about 2 seconds. And then you're standing around doing it again. It's like a lot of anticipatory type thing. I don't know. There's something weird to it.
Yeah. You really have to perform in the moment, in that very, very small moment. You have to perform. And if you miss it, everybody knows it.
Yeah. And then you got a lot of time afterwards if you strike out to think about that strikeout, and then you got your time again. It is very funny from there on a training perspective. That's why I always like, the little things that you can do to always improve, because that's really throwing a ball a little bit better, or, swinging a bat a little bit more fluent, from there, the skill of it, I think was always so interesting.
Absolutely.
So now when you found rowing and you said this was like something just naturally that you were good at, like, what do you mean by that? Was it just you had the power of it? Was it just kind of your body just fit well into the boat? Or?
Yeah, I think it was my body fit what was needed for the sport. And so I think my first look at it, so I went and attended this presentation by the coach. They had the like sports fair, first day of the year. They brought this big 8 and they put it right in the middle of campus. And so I walked by and I was like, ooh, that's cool. It's this big, it's like 60-foot long carbon fiber shell. I mean, it's just sleek, shiny, the like carbon fiber seats are like, whoa, this thing is impressive. Whatever this is, it's impressive. So I went to this and the coach gives this shorter talk, and then he shows, I think it was like the 2004 US men's 8 at the Olympics. What was that, Atlanta? 2004?
No, that's earlier. I think 92, right? Was it?
God, I don't remember.
Okay.
Anyways, so he puts on this really amazing performance of the US men's 8 and kind of like talks us through it, but it's playing on the big projector and you just kind of getting these chills. You're like, ooh, like I feel it. And then there was a practice where we had to pull a 6K. And if you've ever, had pulled any kind of timed event on the erg, like it's pretty miserable.
Yeah.
But there's something about not knowing what you're getting into that always allows you to have a little bit of blind faith in what it's going to be. And I remember reporting to the erg room, and it was I think it was the 2 coaches, the assistant coach and the head coach. And I think I had class when the group was doing their 6K, like all the novices were showing up to do their first 6K so that the coach could get times from them. So I had to come up and do it alone. And it was me sitting on an erg and the head coach and the assistant coach watching me pull a 6K in silence. And it was like, that's about a, 18 to 25 minute adventure, depending on how you do. And you also don't know what to expect if you've never rowed before. So you're like, well, I don't know how long 6,000 meters is going to take. Yeah. Like, I guess let me just start taking strokes and then I'll figure it out. And very quickly I was like, oh, okay. But I did well. I did well for somebody who had never done it before. And obviously I didn't know how to row. Nobody knows how to row. It's a skill movement, just like nobody knows how to clean or snatch the first time they put a barbell in their hands. Right. Mm-hmm. But I did well enough that the coaches were impressed. And so I got a spot on the team and started to train. And there was something, I don't know what it was, but the technicality of the sport, the complete commitment to this skill over just being a brute athlete, because I had never been a brute athlete. Like my biggest weakness in football was that I didn't know how to hit. Like I didn't have the intensity to hit somebody. I was the kid who would like half hit and I'd always bounce off. And my senior year, I like finally figured out, oh, you run through them. Yeah. Got it. Like that's how you tackle somebody. And so like, it wasn't until my senior year of high school that I like found intensity. Right. And so like I made my way into this. And so I wasn't an intensity athlete. I guess I was a technical athlete, or I had to be because I'd never been great. So I always paid attention to technique. And so I think that technique on water in rowing generally takes you a lot further than power. You can be really strong on the water, but the saying is that ergs don't float. And so you can pull a monster rowing machine score erg you can pull a monster erg score, but it doesn't transfer to the water unless your technique is good enough to not slow the boat down. And I think that's what I had. And so I just kind of quickly like made my way in that first year into the varsity boat, which stunned me. And I think it was maybe like the coach's vote of confidence in me. And so something about that, like locked in, like, oh, I'm good enough to keep going here. Like I should stick around to see what this could be for me. Because of all the novices, there were maybe 2 of us, I think, that have been moved into the varsity boat. And I was like, well, let's see where this goes.
Okay.
Let's see where it goes from here.
Gotcha. When you say technique, I mean, what do you mean by like perfect technique on it? I'm always curious about this because for a long time, I thought it was like with lifting, it's perfect form. But I think form and technique is something a little bit different because you can have perfect form, but it doesn't necessarily transfer into the power of it as well. So, I mean, with the technique, because I mean, just going on a personal story, as I said, when I worked with the crew team, we had a couple of concept 2s that they kept in there and I enjoyed it. Just getting in and just kind of, I did, a couple 500s and like 1,000, nothing like crazy. Sure. And I thought as a young 20, I thought I was like cruising. I'm like getting nice pay. Then I'm seeing these like 14-year-olds that are coming in and they look like they're just out for a pleasure cruise and they're just smoking my times.
Right.
Like, okay, there's a different technique involved in here that I'm not seeing. Yep.
So there are 2 different ways to talk about technique when it comes to rowing. There's rowing on a rowing machine, which is its own sport. Okay. It's relatable to rowing on the water in so much as learning how to ride a, 4-wheeler or a tricycle is relatable to learning how to ride a unicycle. The same components are there and the essence of it is there, but it's not the same thing, right? Like you can be really great on a tricycle. You can be super fast in a tricycle race, but then if I all of a sudden take away your tricycle and put a unicycle under you, I'm like, now race. You're not going to compete the same, right? It's the skill goes up exponentially. So there are 2 types of rowing. There's rowing machine rowing and there's rowing on the water. And rowing on the machine is about trying to create as much direct force application down at the feet that run up the chain that is your body, the kinetic chain that is your body. And you have to transfer it to the handle, which connects to the flywheel. And the flywheel is what reports to, the little monitor that's sitting in front of you. The right technique will give you the maximum output per stroke possible. Force, acceleration, and distance. If you can maximize those 3 things, you could replace distance with length, force, acceleration, and length. And I suppose you could also put rate in there, number of strokes per minute. But if you can maximize those 4 principles, then you can create an effective stroke, which is why you're saying, 14, 15-year-old kids are on there looking like they're going for a pleasure cruise, rocking you on scores. They're making it look like a pleasure cruise because their body's just on autopilot trying to maximize those 4 variables, force, acceleration, length, and rate. And you inherently begin to understand the better you get at it, how to use rate to your advantage. Your body naturally just settles into what its biomechanics are for let's call it length and acceleration, although acceleration is paired to stroke rate. So, you have to start to understand those 4 variables. Once you can do that, you start to be able to drive your scores faster. So we'll say down, a split is how we refer to speed in rowing, and a split is your per 500 meter pace. So therefore a faster time, a 1:30 means it would take you 1 minute and 30 seconds to go 500 meters. A 2-minute pace means it would take you 2 minutes to go 500 meters. So a 1:30 is faster than a 2-minute. So your objective is to try and maximize those variables to create the fastest split possible. However, rowing machine rowing is very independent. It's baseball. You are performing, all eyes are on you, and that score is right there on that monitor. And whatever that machine says is what you did. There's no faking it. So then there's no hiding. So if your team pulls a 6K test, you know exactly where you stack up with the rest of those athletes. Nobody hides. You can be an amazing 2,000 meter, you can have an amazing first 2,000 meters. And if you blow your load and have nothing for the next 4,000, well, sucks to be you. That's going to be a very miserable 4,000 meters.
Right.
And everybody's going to know afterwards, right? So everybody's going to know that you don't have the ability to perform when it comes time. Mm-hmm. On the water rowing, however, is where we get to much higher skill. So not only are we worrying about force, acceleration, length, rate, but now we're worrying about balance, timing, flow, feel, all of these almost tertiary athletic measures of fitness that are more ethereal in nature, that can only really be felt and much harder to create in a tangible atmosphere. So when you're rowing in a boat, you want to disappear. If you're a standout athlete in a boat, you're doing something wrong. The best athletes, you can't even tell they're there. And that's how you make a boat go fast, is if you can put 8 together who all are exactly the same. Nobody wants to be a superstar. Everybody pushes for the same cause, which is to make the physical boat, not you as an 8, but to make the physical boat go fast. That is your objective. It's not to be the best. Being the best comes when it comes to, erg performance. As soon as you get to the water, your goal is to blend in and be as invisible as possible, but doing everything that you can to make that boat just go quick.
That's such an interesting concept. It's really like the ultimate team sport then, really. It's like there is no standout on it. It's interesting. It's seeing some of the best of seeing like some things from the Olympic runs and stuff. It looks like the exact same person is just duplicated in picture by picture that's going through, and you just see just the seamless flow from there. But I would almost equate it, maybe this is right, is just going from an erg into the water. It's almost like trying to squat with a Smith machine and then putting a barbell on your back. Sure. And all of a sudden you got a lot more stability that needs to go into, handling that bar path versus the other.
And then put that person on a Bosu ball.
Yeah.
And now you have rowing. Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's
okay.
That's exactly it. It's just, they're different. It's why they're different sports.
Okay.
And that's a distinction too about, I'm not trying to draw us into Dark Horse. I want to continue on the path for I'm having fun with this conversation, but that's what Dark Horse has been about. We don't teach rowing. I teach you how to use the rowing machine. I'm not teaching you rowing the sport. I don't care if you love rowing, and I don't need you to love rowing. But what I want for you is to find a love for the movement of rowing on the rowing machine, just so that you can enjoy your experience when you're on it. After that, it's up to you what you find. And I'm not even trying to convince anybody, but if you're like, listen, this machine seems interesting to me. How do I get started? I'm here to help. All right. And I'm here to just be a shepherd on your journey. Anyways.
Yeah. It's interesting with that. And I want to know more about really the full benefits of it. But the thing that I saw from working with the team, because I went to my first regatta, I remember. And as you mentioned, a regatta is an interesting thing to go see. I've been around a million different sporting events, different competitions, but you've got different tents up. Like you have people setting up these camps. It's like this whole, like a festival that's going on.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And it was a club-based team, and I was on, teams before, and we were very close. We had tight-knit groups, but a lot of times it was like, 3 or 4 friends on a team were like very close. And then other ones, you kind of had little cliques inside it. All of them were so connected. Like they were all best friends on this team. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But now that you're talking about this, where you really need to know the other people of what they're doing and really completely kind of come together on that, I can see that there's almost a deeper, connection behind this, and why people fall in love with this sport of getting into rowing. And they make these very tight-knit bonds, because you really cannot stand out, in this. You have to all be working together, like all fingers on a hand.
100%. Absolutely. You have to gel. There's an element to rowing on the water where every seat has its own character. Right. And so there are 8 seats. It's not just 8 seats. You can't just take me and put, if I normally sit at the front, you can't just take me and drop me into another seat in the boat, because that seat in the boat has an entirely different characteristic and entirely different trait requirements to sit in that seat and to be able to move the boat from that position. And so it's almost like the military, like everybody has a rank, and you just have to perform at your rank and do exactly what you're supposed to do, again, to make the physical boat move. And you have to trust that every single other person is doing the same thing with their specific role. And I don't think the outside world, if you haven't rowed in a boat, that's very hard to give you that concept. But my seat was the stroke seat when I was in college. Now, please don't put me back there. But the point is, I sit at the back of the boat, which is the stern, and I face the coxswain, who is the race car driver. Mm-hmm. And so the coxswain and I are the only two people in the boat who actually face each other. The coxswain is the only person who actually faces forward during the race. So other than, I think, the backstroke, rowing is the only sport where you cross the finish line backwards. Food for thought. I don't know that many people have thought that through.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah. So all the athletes are facing backwards. The bow is the back of the boat to the rowers, but technically the front. So I was the stroke seat, which means that I sat all the way at the front of the 8 guys. And it was my job to set the rate and the technique for the boat. So everybody had to emulate my technique, which means that every guy had to have the flexibility to take on the technique that I set for them, which, my technique had to just be rock solid, the exact same every day without fail. Whether it was perfect technique or not, it was my technique, and it was the technique of the boat, therefore. Okay, so that gives a bit of like a superiority complex to that seat, right? Because everybody's supposed to follow you. But then as well, it's my job to feel what's happening behind me. So I know all of those guys well enough to know that the guy that's sitting in 4 seat might be dropping his hands a little bit too early. And when he drops his hands a little bit too early, it causes this light twitch of the boat. I feel that. I know exactly who it is, because I know what every single guy in the boat does. I know all of his idiosyncrasies, and I know that he just has a tendency to drop his hands. So I feel that. I never see it, because you never swivel your head. You're always just looking straight ahead. And I can take that and tell the coxswain that. I can be like, hey, watch 4 seat. And the coxswain will look back and be like, hey, Tyler, check your hands. Like, you're dropping your hands, man. Knock it off. And so that's the level where you have to feel each other. And I think that's where you talk about, they're all bonded, because you have to be. And if you don't have a team that's bonded, you can't make a boat go fast. At a certain level, you have to find a togetherness. And without that, boats just don't move the same way.
It's such a fascinating thing. I love conversations like this and hearing about it. It's almost like you have like a dance partner when you see 2 people who just dance so well together and stuff. But now you got 8 dance partners, and you got to all work and gel together. And
you have one orchestrator, the coxswain, right? And so the coxswain is the one whose job it is to keep them all in line. Like, as rowers, like, we're just the dumb power behind the boat. Like, we're just there to do one thing, and that's just to make the boat move. The coxswain's job is to orchestrate it all. The race plan, keep the boat going in the right direction, steer it, make sure that the coxswain has to know every single one of the guys in that boat and know how to motivate them independently. And then in the middle of a race, be able to change the tone of their voice, because you like to be screamed at and told that you're a horrible human being, and that's what motivates you. You're like, you get angry. Whereas I need to be told that my mama loves me, and that, I haven't done anything wrong in my life. And I like, I like a gentle whispering in my ear.
Oh
and
my gosh. Yeah.
And so the coxswain in the same sentence can be screaming at you, telling you exactly what you need to change to make the boat faster. And then in the same breath, switch to a completely different tone of voice, a cadence of speech, and the verbiage that she or he is using to motivate me entirely differently. And you walk down the entire course, the coxswain has to do it all. Coxswain has the hardest job in the boat by far.
I'm imagining the coxswain walking around with a notebook and asking the love languages of everybody that's in the boat.
The best coxswains do. I mean, they record every practice. So they bring recorders into the boat and they just hit record at the beginning. And then after practice, they'll sit there and in their off hours while they're studying, they'll just be listening to the recording of what they said, how they said it. They'll hear, if anybody was giving them feedback, they'll analyze their calls. They'll analyze their race plans.
Right.
That's what makes a great coxswain, truly. And they keep notebooks of like, things to remember about each athlete and what those athletes have asked for. And
well, I can see it. I mean, I could see how all this stuff came together for you. It's like, it was first the thing that like naturally you were good at, your body fit, on the erg and then into the boat. And then you combine this community type feel, I'm sure. This is why I'm sure it was a huge impact on you. But I know then you went from this and then you went into the CrossFit world a bit and then you competed in there, right?
Yeah. So we had this great rowing career. All of us that came in that year, and this is probably also a big part of it. We were a very good group of novices. So our very first year, we went to an East Coast race, which the team had never done before because our novice group, our novice 8, had done so well that our coach was like, well, I guess we can take you to a big East Coast race. So let's go. So end of the season in, I think it was May or something like that, we went to Philadelphia and competed in Dad Bales. And we took 3rd. We medaled. We were the only West Coast team to be there. So nobody gave us their time of day thinking, oh, they're just here for fun. And we medaled. And after that, we basically took over the program, our 8, and we just stuck together for all 4 years. Nobody quit. We just all stayed together. And we started saying, like, we want to do big things. And so eventually we ended up going to the IRAs, which are our national championships, our senior year. And just because our group stuck together and we didn't have a big team, so we couldn't afford injuries. We couldn't afford people quitting. We had 12. That was it, an 8 and a 4. And if, God forbid, anybody got sick, injured, anything, the whole thing would have blown up. But they didn't. We just managed to stick together. But through that process, this is 2005 to 2009. Those are my 4 years rowing. And if you do the math, yes, I did take 6 years to get through school. But it was because I knew we were going to go to the national championship. So I stayed an extra year and pulled I don't know if you remember Matt Leinert and what he did his final year, but I basically took ballroom dance, guitar, voice class, one business class.
Now I do remember. Yes.
And
USC, man. Beautiful.
Yeah. So that was my senior year. I took, I think, a few other classes in there, but essentially I stuck around because I knew we were going to go to the national championships. I'm like, I'm never going to get this opportunity again.
No doubt.
Why would I pass this up? And so anyways, during that process, that was the advent of CrossFit, essentially, was in that same window of time. The strength coach at University of San Diego at that time, Stephane Rochet, those OGs in the CrossFit world know that name, Stephane Rochet. He was one of the original flow masters for the level 1 and had gotten his level 1 in Santa Cruz, had been personally trained by Greg Glassman, and was a flow master. He was our strength and conditioning coach. So in 2006, when he came in, he converted our strength room to a CrossFit gym and turned our entire athletic department, all sports, onto CrossFit as the methodology for our strength training. And we credit that, our entire team, again, as you've mentioned, or as you've alluded to, all of the guys on my team, I'll never have closer friends in my entire life than that group of guys. Doesn't matter. That's the tightest knit group I've ever been a part of. And every single one of us still CrossFits to this day. We love CrossFit because he introduced us to it, and we credit it with being a big reason that we were so successful, because it was like a secret weapon. No other school knew about it yet. Nobody, God forbid, an entire athletic department convert over to CrossFit. Nobody knew what it was. And so we took it on. And so when I got done with rowing, I was too light to be a heavyweight and too heavy to be a lightweight. And I just didn't have it to go to the next level of rowing. And I knew that.
Real quick, were you guys doing any strength and conditioning before this at all?
We were, because we were a varsity sport, we were doing strength training. We couldn't stand the previous strength coach. He was, so funny story, but Jim Harbaugh was the football coach at USD when we got there. And so it was his strength coach that he had brought with him there. Turley, I think was his name. We couldn't stand the guy. I mean, it was one of those the two of them, like football was the
football
only
or
thing.
Bust. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Football was the only thing that mattered, and any other sport could go suck it. And so we just, it sucked because every time we were in the room, we're like, you literally don't care about us.
Right.
You don't care why, you're not giving us anything useful. But that entirely changed when Stephane came in.
Gotcha.
Because he cared about every sport and he cared to get the most out of his athletes. And I think for us, that was big because nobody really cared about rowing to begin with. Not many people do. And, let alone the athletics department at most schools, unless you're at a big school like Stanford or Cal. Well, Stanford cut their rowing program, but Cal, Washington, the Hales, the Yales, Harvards, Princeton's, big schools that have deep rowing histories. Of course, they care about their rowing programs, but us as a smaller Catholic school, like nobody gave two shits about us. And so for us, it was very much a dark horse mentality. Like we just had to put our heads down and just grind. Like that was what it took for us to get good because nobody cared how we were doing. And so if we wanted to do well, it was on us, not on somebody else. And nobody expected us to do well. And so there was also that like, okay, well, nobody expects anything of us. So I guess we can do whatever we want. And if we want to be successful, then we can blow everybody out of the water because they won't expect it from us. And, but when Stephane came in, it was like, we finally had somebody who gave a shit about us. And he was very much of that same cut from the same cloth of like, you will work your ass off in my facility when you are here. I expect 100% from you at all times. I expect respect. I expect hard work, and I expect you to shut up and do the work. And after that, that's when everything else can happen. You want to come and have a conversation? Absolutely. I'm here for you. Like, let's talk about it. You have questions about your training and your programming and everything? Absolutely. You tick off those first three, 100%. When you are in here during your hour or your hour and 10 or whatever you've got, you give me everything you have. And to us, that deeply connected because we were here just in the trenches alone. And here was a guy who gave us the time of day and who was willing to push us to the places that we wanted to be pushed. And that was a big thing that we struggled with is our head coach never pushed us. And so we had to push ourselves. We actually basically mutinied our junior summer and went back to the AD and said, it's either our coach or us, the top athletes. And we were like, we want to go to the national championships. He doesn't believe that we can do it. So like
that's so crazy.
You have a team that wants to be good and you have a coach that refuses to accept that they could be good. What are you going to do about this? And so we ended up that whole season, summer, we would have weekly meetings with the coach, the AD, and the top 6 of us that had stayed in town to train. And we dictated what our training plan was going to be our senior year, instituting all sorts of rules and whatnot that the entire team was going to abide by if we wanted to be successful. And everybody, of course, did. All 12 of us were there to like do it. And Stephane was right in line with that. And so we deeply connected with him on that. And he respected, again, all sports, all athletes. And, we would see other sports in there who previously under Turley had thrived because they were either basketball or football. And they would come in and, they'd walk between stations, things like that. And Stephane would lose it on them. And he'd be like, I don't give a shit who you are.
You little entitled piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. I specifically remember one event with the basketball team where they were like, just kind of walking between the outdoor station and the indoor station. And he's like, that's it. Everybody down, push-up position now. And for the next 20 minutes, he took them between some variation of like planks and push-ups or basically, and like maybe abs for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
While just tearing them down, being like, nobody cares about you guys. You're not a successful team. You think that your shit doesn't stink, but you guys are barely winning any games. So what gives you the right to think that you can walk around in the strength room when you aren't putting in the work elsewhere to be a successful team? And we were just like, we were like in the corners, like doing our workout, but like internally we were like, yes, as we're just trying to work hard over here, but nobody ever thinks of us, but we just wanted to do the work. Yeah. And just get better. So anyways, you know, we had this very strong connection with Stephane, and to this day, I think I credit him with being an incredible mentor, whether he knew it or not, to many of us. And in fact, I don't know if you know Logan Gelbrich. He owns Deuce Gym in Venice Beach, which is a very well-known, I don't know if he's still a CrossFit affiliate or not, but I mean, incredible culture gym. Like if you haven't talked to him or looked him up, or anybody that's listening, if you haven't, it is like a pilgrimage. You should at some point make a pilgrimage to Deuce Gym in Venice Beach. Logan was a baseball player at the same time. Logan went into CrossFit same time as me. We competed against each other. He's gone in and it's his career now. A couple guys from football of our same era, they went on to start Train Heroic. I don't know if you ever heard of this.
Yep, heard that.
Training software. So Josh and I'm blanking on their names, but both of those guys were USD athletes at the same time. They went into it again, I believe, strongly because of Rochet. Multiple others have gone on to become strength and conditioning coaches and CrossFit coaches. Just our lives were truly mentored by this man who I don't think he really understands how big of an impact he had on some young athletes at the time. And so I found CrossFit while we were rowing. And so post-college, I did what I thought I was supposed to do, went and get a job with a suit and a tie, work in an office, hated my life every day of it, missed being an athlete immensely. You know, in my brain, I was like, so I just spent, 22 years of my life, 20 years of my life being an athlete. And now I'm just supposed to say like, never again. Like, how does that work? Like, how can you expect that of people? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I've got to have something. I can't just give up this thing that I've loved my whole life. And so I just happened to, I was like, well, let me see what the real world of CrossFit is about. Because I'd only ever known it in our kind of
little community,
our community on campus. And so I found CrossFit Invictus, which was the closest gym to me at the time. And I just
good spot to jump into.
Yeah. But Invictus had just started. It was only 6 months old when I walked in. So nobody knew it was going to be what it turned out to be. And I walked in the door and became a member and started competing that very first year. Which meant I'd missed 2009 because that's when I came into the gym. So I joined in like late 2009 or mid 2009, started training for to compete in that winter, and then went to the first sectionals and qualified to go to regionals as an individual, and then went to regionals and ended up DNFing a floater work-out because I was, I was basically legs and lungs, and that's all I was. I had no upper body strength from rowing. I had like no push strength. I wasn't incredibly strong. I was just aerobically a monster.
Right.
And so like any workout that was lighter and it was just a grind, done. Like put me on it, I'll figure it out. But then there's this workout that was 185, 20 lateral burpees over a hurdle, and 40 lateral burpees over a hurdle and 20 shoulder to overhead with 185. Well, I weighed 185, and I think my 1 rep max was 185 on a clean and jerk. So all the big guys,
adrenaline in the world. I don't know.
So I had to single clean and jerk all those reps, and I think I got like 14 and ran out of time. But the guy who was on the team that had gone to regionals, one of the guys injured his shoulder, so I made my way onto the team. And then, so I went to the games that year, 2010. That was my first year at the games with Team Invictus. Oh, wow. And then never lost my spot after that for the next 4 years. So 10, 11, 12, 13, I went to the CrossFit games with Team Invictus. And simultaneously recognized, nobody's teaching anybody how to row here. Well, hey, there's like a little secret lever we can pull. Like I could teach you all how to row. So I started doing that. And that's what I was going to ask about. It's like, cause rowing is a big part of, CrossFit competition. I was like, did you look around with all these people being like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? It's like, nobody knows how to row. Yeah, 100%. And there were no resources out there at the time. So I was like, well, hey, CJ, can I start teaching the gym? And he was like, all right, well, you got to teach me and you got to teach the coaches first. So we know that you can coach. And I was like, oh God, this is terrifying. But, put a little thing together and taught them over what takes me 15 minutes now. It took me 4 1-hour sessions then.
Right.
And because I was, still figuring it out. And then I got the bid to start teaching rowing. And then one of our coaches got pregnant. And so they needed somebody to step in when she went out on maternity leave. And so they sent me to get my level 1. And then I started coaching and I started putting on my own seminars. My very first one was in Europe, and then came back, and Concept 2 hired me to lead the CrossFit rowing seminar. And so then for the next 5 years, I led the CrossFit rowing seminar. And that's just kind of like the snowball effect just started to happen after that.
Some awesome serendipitous events just rolled right into place there. So what was it like coaching right off the bat? Did you like get the itch right away? Like it'd be like, oh, this is something that I could really see doing on a regular basis.
That was another one of those, like, I'll be here for whatever the next step is. I mentioned I hated my life in the professional world. And it's because I was selling life insurance, and I believe in life insurance, but I was working for Northwestern Mutual. I still have my insurance there. I still think it's a good company, but speaking about everybody else's impending doom day in and day out was miserable. Like all I was talking about was death with 5 people every single day. Talking about like that, I was miserable, made great money. And I think the product's good, but it just wasn't me. I was not the right person to be selling it.
Right.
And so I quit after about 9 months, which I think is the average lifespan probably of a sales associate in the life insurance world. The strong ones persevere, but I was not strong. And, but I had done well enough that I had made as much in that 6 or 9 months as all of my friends had made in their first year and a half. And so I was like, all right, well, I can live off of that for 6 months and figure out what my next step is, but I got to get out of here. I'm like dying inside every day. So I quit with no plan. And that kind of was like, well, I better start figuring it out. And that was when I started coaching in Invictus. And so it did feel natural to me. I think I had always had a little bit of coaching inside of me. I remember my stepmom always telling me when I was growing up, she's like, you'd make a great teacher. And I was always like, yeah, right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be a teacher, and so I don't know, I guess I had exuded that. I never saw it, but she did. And so as I found my way into it, I think I started to enjoy it, and it clicked with me in a way. And, Invictus was an incredible environment to be in, because we were still the black sheep of the community. CJ had been kind of excommunicated from CrossFit back then for a variety of reasons. But our shirts literally had 3 white sheep and then a black sheep with a red V inside of it. Back then the color was red. They changed it to green. I was there when the transition happened.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a red V inside of a black sheep just standing out there, and it was Invictus. And we were like proud of being the black sheep of the CrossFit community. But what CJ did well, CJ's a good learner. And so he went out and sought out the most brilliant minds in all of sport, from strength training to mobility to gymnastics, all the things that make up CrossFit. And he sought out the people that were doing it the best in the world at that point in time. And he would go for periods of time and either pay them to just shadow them for a week or 2, or he would attend their seminars, or he'd ask them to come and put seminars on at Invictus. And this is before that was a thing. Like seminars weren't a moneymaker really back then, right? So we had Kelly Starrett, Carl Powley, Mike Bergner, James FitzGerald, like all these incredible names in coaching coming to Invictus, and we were learning from them. And so we just had this unbelievable learning environment where there was a very high bar of expectation for what a coach was. CJ was not satisfied with a coach just being a coach. You had to be excellent. And all of us had our own specialty, which was unique as well. I had rowing. We almost always had one of the Bergner kids. So Sage, Cody, I don't remember if we had a third, but at least Sage and Cody were both there. And so I was teammates with them. They were my coaches. We had powerlifting coaches. We had, nutrition, mobility, like we all had specialties. So we also were always learning from each other.
Yes.
And so we become incredibly deep in our knowledge sets. So not only was I a rowing specialist, but I spent a year being coached by Sage Bergner. So I spent a year as an essentially as an, while I was CrossFit training, but I was specializing in Olympic weightlifting because I knew I was weak. So it's like, well, coach me for a year, Sage, like make me strong. And so, we got to the point where we were all as comfortable teaching Olympic weightlifting or kettlebells or mobility or gymnastics as we were with our own specialty, because we were just living in it day in, day out. So
it's awesome. It's amazing what just that environment around can just do for you and just keeps that learning curve going. It's like, because you saw from the first strength coach that you had who just felt like he couldn't give a shit about you. Yeah. And then all of a sudden to somebody who just cared about everybody that was coming in, and you start to see the polars of both sides. I think a lot of us have those stories and, ways of you definitely have the stories of the bad. It seems a lot of times like it's, it's nice to pair it with the ones that were really good and inspiring from there, which is huge. So just to be around those environments, right, of positivity, going from, life insurance, which is so negative. I went from the restaurant business, which was like everything was behind the line was just a complaint about something, going from, the gym environment where everybody's talking about goals. They're talking about improving themselves in their lives. It's like, you can really tell the difference of this really quick, especially as you get into your 20s of like, I want to be around this more than this. Yeah. So then in 2015 was when you started with Dark Horse Rowing and got into that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now the name is so fascinating to me with Dark Horse. Because Dark Horse a lot of times means like underdog. Is that all where it came from?
Yeah. 100%. It was absolutely intentional. And as I alluded to earlier, like that was our whole rowing career. We had felt like underdogs. The school didn't care about us. Our coach didn't care about us. None of the other sports cared about us. And our school had, even our varsity when we were novices didn't care about us. After that bronze medal I told you about, our very first year, our varsity walked up to us and said, "Hey guys, that was cool what you did, but don't get used to that because this isn't a winning program. So, lower your expectations a little bit." And I'd mentioned the year after that, we went and took over the varsity because we were just like, all right, bye guys, we'll leave you behind and we'll take over the program. And sure enough, we all trained that summer. And I think one of the guys in the varsity boat was able to keep his spot in the boat, but the rest of us took the entire boat because those guys didn't care. And that was just our mentality the entire time. It was like, nobody cares about us. So if it's going to get done, it's all on us. Mm-hmm. And the people that I've continued to love to coach have continued to be those people who maybe nobody else believes in. Maybe they don't come from this high pedigree of fitness or sport. Maybe they're brand new to moving, but they need somebody in their corner. And that's Dark Horse. Like the idiom of what it means to be a dark horse, that person that works in the dark when nobody else is looking, that knows that their character comes from what they actually do and their actions when nobody is looking. That's the person that we stand for. That's what Dark Horse is about. And that is maybe the most important part of what this business is. Dark Horse isn't about rowing. It's not. We're not a rowing company. Dark Horse is a community that supports people who believe in that idiom of working hard, making themselves better. And we just happen to use rowing usually as the vessel to help people get there.
Man, I love that so much. That's really the art of humanity, right? It's just to be encouraging, like how little encouragement that you really need to help somebody. Just to go up to somebody and throw shade like that. I don't know. It's like, I don't work in those circles anymore. I don't have those people in my life anymore, but it's like to go up to somebody after winning something that nobody else probably has won in that whole area and just be like, well, don't get used to it. It's like,
can you imagine? Like the balls that it takes to do that? Like you deserve to just go live in your own little corner. Like nobody wants to be a part of that.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, it's that famous story, I think, of like after the 5K and they were handing out free bagels and the guy went up with his friend and is just like, hey, let's go get a free bagel. And the guy's like, oh, the line's too long. And it's like, dude, it's a free bagel. Yeah. And it's like, some people only see the obstacles that are in the way. Some people only see the results, from it. And it's so fascinating from that. And, I love that. I was pretty sure that's kind of where the whole point behind it, came about of Dark Horse from there, but hearing you put it that way. And it's really a community, even if it's, an online community, an in-person community, whatever it is, it's a community. And it's like, if we all encourage each other with that, regardless of whether it's rowing, whether it's another form of fitness, whether it's mental health or anything like that, that's what we should all really stand for, to build up. So I think that's freaking awesome, man.
I'm in the business of building character, not about teaching people how to row. Again, we've become known for rowing because that's the thing that, I kind of staked my career on. But because of my experiences in coaching and the people that I was able to be around, and I think through it all, like you just said, like you learn who you want to have in your life, and you have to act on it. You have to be able to cut the people who don't belong there and lean into the people who do. And the more you do that, the more you're able to build into that life that you're looking for. And I think a lot of people search for that for a long time, and they might not be aware that they can make those cuts, that they can change their direction, that ultimately their outcome falls on their process. That the day-to-day, the small actions that you take, the small choices you make, the small things that you do are what really determine who you end up becoming, where you end up, what you end up doing. Now, we can't control outcome, right? We can only control our process. And so if you continue to refine and iterate your process day in and day out without expectation of what the outcome should be, inevitably your outcome will become some hazy version of what you're hoping for. But I can't control if, X company gives me a contract, or if I get to go travel the world as a part of the Invictus Athletes Camp staff for, a few years. Like, it's not up to me. That's up to CJ, or that's up to the company that decides, we like Dark Horse, and we want to hire them to do this for us. Mm-hmm. None of that's up to me. But what is up to me is what I do day in, day out, whether I'm making content, whether I'm making phone calls, whether I'm nurturing relationships, whether the community that I'm building supports the character that I want to show to the world and the people that I want to be around. And so it's important that those people who don't fit that, well, I'm happy to let you go. And it's never with ill will. It's like, we're not meant to be in the same fields right now. You go do your thing, man. 100%.
Yeah.
I just don't need to be a part of it. Nor do I want you to be a part of mine, because we keep hitting each other instead of circling and helping each other accelerate.
Yeah. And I think that common denominator is just being authentic with your intentions of it, right? And just absolutely just following that. I put out a question to, our community on the Strength Connection on that, of what's your definition of doing your best? And got some different responses out there, because it's an interesting introspective thing to say. And somebody said it's being authentic with your efforts. And I was like, I think that's right. I think that's it right there.
That's a great one.
Yeah. And it's it's so powerful, right? Because you can't, it's detaching from outcomes. You can't expect, these things to happen. You hope for the best, scenario, and obviously you hope for success and you hope to do that. But just going into a race, sometimes it's one person, they're a little bit more on point than you are. Right. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You can go back and you can look at it. If you're truly authentically giving your best effort on it, that's when I think we can get over things a lot faster. It's like when we don't put our best effort forward in it, it's like regret comes from not putting that effort in, right? Yes. It's like, if you give your absolute best effort and it in your mind, even if you lose the game, even if you don't hit the goal by that time, but you gave your best effort, you're putting your head to sleep at night and you're sleeping well. Yeah. Because you know that you did something. And I think that's where what you're talking about with, community support and stuff, that all works well. But then you do your job. You don't need to stand out any more than the other. You just need to give your best effort. And I think that is really one of the secrets that we're all trying to find in this world. That's a really great connection. Yeah. Because it's true. No matter how much we want to, we can't control anyone else but ourselves. Yeah. And we spend so much time wishing we could. Mm-hmm. If you adjust your own behavior, you will find your way to the things that you are looking for. Absent that, you will not. And too many people fight that upstream battle for far too long.
I'm not where I want to be. How do I get there? You're like, well, take a look at what your day-to-day decisions are dictating. If you're not changing anything, it's impossible to change. Change just won't magically find you, right? And if it does, it's probably not going to be good, because it's going to probably be in the form of something devastating,
yes,
as opposed to something that, is great for you. You're not just like magically find your way, like, wow, I tripped and fell, and all of a sudden I have amazing hip mobility. Like it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
So like, if you're not where you want to be, you're the only person that can control it. And none of that is meant to be negative. It's just reality. Mm-hmm. Like you have to change. You have to change if you want anything else to. So there's this, I am anti-dogmatic in all things. I just do not believe that there's any one thing that's good enough that you're just like that forever and always and nothing else. I don't believe that. We're always learning new things. Mm-hmm. Do I believe that like fundamentally meditation is good? Yes. And do I partake in meditation? Yes. But like, I'm also not like, you need to meditate all day, every day. Like it's for everybody. It's not, right? For some people, prayer is the right thing. Now, if we lumped like prayer and meditation and, fly fishing all into the same basket, okay, yeah, like thoughtfulness. We should have some form of thoughtfulness in our lives. But I'm also not here to be like, each and every one of you needs that, because at some point in our lives, we either can't or it's not the right thing for us in that moment. It's just not. So anyways, I'm inherently anti-dogmatic in all things. And I've already lost where I was going with this. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I was really drawing a strong connection there.
It was. Well, it's like no, the Super Bowl is the best to win. No, the World Series is the best. Yeah, no, right. The national championship is the best. It's like you all freaking won.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all the same type of thing. I think it comes to, oh my gosh, I'm referencing this book again. People are going to just kill me, but there's a book, Mastery by Robert Greene, which I read, which is, he eloquently put together like what we do with mastery, where it's, you start with the apprenticeship and then you move to the creative active. So it's like the apprenticeship is kind of the, it's getting your reps in, it's kind of like if you're learning to row, and if you want to learn to row, I'm sure there's some principles that you have down. There's certain ways and techniques that you can build up. But now if you want to master that, you want to win like the whole thing, you're going to have to figure out ways that fit perfectly for you. Like you need to be creative within that. It's like you can learn the fundamentals of a sport. I always think of it like the framework of like, if you're playing basketball, it's the court. Like, that the basket's there and you need to put the ball in the hoop, and you can learn how to dribble. But if you want to make it to the NBA, you better know a lot of different ways to get to the hoop and how to break down defenses. You need to get creative inside that. And that's mastery. And where it's like, and going into the anti-dogmatic, there's no one way that we can do. Like I'm a kettlebell guy through and through. I've been with the RKC and with Strong First forever, and I love it. But like just following those programs, it's not going to get me to that next level there. It's going to fuel me. I need to be creative inside it and try different things and kind of, build it in. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the finite versus infinite game concept, right? Mm-hmm. Like a finite game is something to which the rules have been established and we can all operate by. Basketball, we all know that there's a court. We all know what the exact parameters are. We know I don't know the rules. I'm not a basketball guy, but for the analogy, we all understand like there are rules that determine when the game is won and when the game is not won. But the infinite game is the one in which, how do you play? What are the tactics that you use to get there? There's no end to that learning and to that adjustment and to, trying to figure out what is the optimal way of doing it. Yes. And this Friday and Saturday, I was one of the sport commentators for the World Rowing Indoor Championships. It was virtual this year. And so I was sitting and watching all these different techniques and talking with one of the other commentators. We ended up in a lot of these conversations about, well, what's the technique that we're seeing here with this person? Because it's indoor rowing world championships. What's the technique here? We haven't seen that before. That's something unlike I've seen from somebody else. And there are some techniques out there that look absolutely nothing like rowing on the water technique. Rowing on the water technique, generally, you kind of stay in like a general sphere. It looks kind of like this, but in the indoor rowing world, frankly, it doesn't matter. All that matters is what the score on your monitor says. And so rowing purists will watch indoor rowing. They're like, that's not the rowing stroke. And you're like, but who cares? It's not about, like, they have figured out how to maximize the machine with basics,
yes,
but for their body. And so if they win, I don't care what their technique's like, and I'm sure they don't, because they have a gold medal. So who cares, right?
Yes.
Would they be able to row on the water? Probably not with that technique. But are they trying to row on the water? Probably not. So again, this is why indoor rowing is a different sport than rowing on the water. You can get away with stuff in indoor rowing that you can't with rowing. And it's all about adjustment. You learn some fundamentals, but then you make it work for you.
I love that. That's right on point. It's such an important thing, I think, to continuously bring up because everybody, like, we can all do really well from the fundamentals of stuff, but then to really create ownership for it yourself and really embody it, which, we're all trying to do for health and fitness, and as coaches too, trying to improve people's health and strength. It's like when you help people take ownership of it so they feel a part of it and they can be creative inside it. I think that's one of the secret sauces to really getting it stick, not just for 6 months, not just for a year, like really bring it into their lives. And, and like I said, you could do it through rowing, you could do it through weightlifting, you could do it through a bunch of them, different one. But I think we're all really singing out of the same hymn book.
Yeah. And the heart of a student.
Yes.
Those people who are willing to learn and want to be technicians, you will be successful in your life if you have the heart of a student, if you're willing to learn from everybody, because it's right back to the same story. Like you can learn from everyone. And so along the way, you have to adjust course. It's right back to process versus outcome. Like if you're not willing to learn and you're not willing to admit that something in your past may have been wrong, well, now you're fixated on trying to hold on to the past and you can't change for the future. You have to let go of your past. You cannot control the past. You can only control what's in front of you right now. And you can't change the future. You can't hope for the future. You can't control what the future is. You can only control whether I just chose to pick up this pen and put it back down. That's the only thing that I can control. And if we can understand that, we will find some version of success. And if you have no expectations for what success is, you will find it. Because you'll always be pleased with where you are. Doesn't mean you have to be happy at all times. I'm not happy at all times. My whole family just came down with a GI infection. Like we've had a really rough 3 days, like a very rough 3 days. Am I happy right now? No. But am I like satiated with where my life is at this moment in time? Yes. I have amazing kids. I'm happy with my career. I'm pleased with where my life is. And I think many people maybe struggle with that because there are parts of their life that they know might feel like concrete, like it's just an anchor and it's like holding them in place. And like, would it be, be like, yeah, but you just quit it. Just stop doing the thing that you hate. People be like, so just quit my job with no plan. But truly like I'm not saying go do that, but you also have to take a very strong look at like, are there alternative options?
Yes.
Could you be doing something that maybe scratches your itch a little bit more because if you do, now you can create change. The best change in my life has been in those moments where I'm like, I'm cutting this thing and I don't know what the future is, but I do know that every day I'm going to try and get a little bit closer and I'm going to try and adjust my course so that it like heads in that direction.
Yes.
When I quit my life insurance job and I didn't know what my next step was going to be, I don't remember where I think I basically took this out of a chapter from my sales experience with life insurance, but I just started calling all the people that I knew, the successful people in my life, which, for me at that time, like successful people is a lower bar than it is now. But I called everybody, just cold called them. And I was like, hey, not an insurance call, promise. Can I have 2 minutes of your time? And, cause I'd like just hit them up 6 months ago about trying to sell them insurance. Yeah. And I was like, I swear, can I just have a moment? And, a lot of these people were gracious enough to listen. And I was like, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Like I'm trying to figure out what my next step is. And I would just love to hear like what you do, how you do it. like if you think there's anything that like any strengths I have and like any guidance you'd be willing to offer me, I would love that. Would you be willing to sit down for a cup of coffee? And it's on me. I promise. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I quit my job, but I don't know what my next step is. And I'm just trying to figure it out.
Right.
And I did that for like 6 months. And then at the end of every single one of those coffee dates, I'd be like, hey, do you have like 3 people that you think would be just good for me to talk to that are successful and that I can just like do this same thing with? Cause I'm just trying to learn. Like, I don't know what I'm doing next, but I don't have anything to do right now. So I feel like this is maybe a good use of my time, is like learn from these amazing people. And then they'd give me 3 people, give me their phone numbers. And I'd be like, do you mind just texting them just to let them know that like, I'm going to give them a call? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. No problem. You know, this is my buddy, whatever, Michael.
Yeah. Okay,
sure. And I'd call up Michael and be like, hey, Michael, we've never met, but so-and-so just told me that I should give you a call. Listen, like I'm in this place in my life where I'm just trying to learn from really successful people. And she said that you were incredibly successful. Any chance I could just buy you a cup of coffee? I promise I have no intention behind this. I'm just genuinely trying to figure out like what my next stage in life is. And 90% of the people were like, you just want to like chat? I was like, yeah, I promise. I have there's nothing that I could even sell you if I wanted to. So like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that'd be great. And so people would sit down with me and I'd go, take 15 minutes or 2 hours, depending on how long the person would sit and chat with me. And a lot of those contacts just became like stepping stones to the next phase of my life. So, there's always a way.
What a great story on, just, I wish more people would do that. It's like you're asking for referrals without asking for money. It takes all the pressure away from it. And if you think of that, if somebody called you today and is like, hey, I heard you're really successful and I just love to hear your story. And if you can help me at all, like everybody's like, absolutely. Like we want to help each other, with that. Like, and then it's such a great thing, to do. I heard Kevin Hart say that a while ago, of just like, people feeling like they're too cool. Like you don't want to be the one who seems thirsty, at the party. It's like, no, just go ask people like what they think. Like you have an opportunity to chat with somebody about finance. If you never, if you don't know anything about that world, or health and fitness, if you don't know much about that, it's like, just ask stuff. You might actually find answers that you're looking for.
Yep. 100%. And the nice part is like I wish I could gift that experience to everybody. Like in a moment in your life when you feel like you're floating and you don't know what's next, and just start meeting with people and don't ask anything of them. Don't ask for anything. Don't ask them to help you. Just talk. Just listen. Just ask the questions that come up naturally. I mean, it's kind of like what a podcast turns into.
Exactly.
But you're doing this in a much more personal way where you're like, I'll come to wherever you want. Like I'm buying 15 minutes, whatever you got. Like I'd love to ask you about how you got to where you are and just learn from you. And so I very much do the same thing now. Like I just had one of the rowers at USD. So fun. There's a new head coach at USD, great guy, known him for about 8 years now. And he just happened to land at USD. And I was like, amazing. I went and did a weight room session with the current USD rowers about a month and a half ago. And it was so fun. Like for me to get back into the varsity weight room and lift with all of these guys and outlift them, which was fun for, me at 36 to be like outlifting all these 20-year-olds, but I digress. They're rowers. They're not strength athletes. So anyways, I got to go hang out with these guys. And at the end, the coach was like, hey, just wanted to thank you, Shane, for being here. Like, guys, if you got any questions for him, go ask him. And I was like, genuinely, guys, my career is rowing. If you want to talk or you want help or you want to come work for me, let me know. Like, I will figure it out. Because I feel deeply connected to USD men's rowing because it set me on a course that forever changed my life. And this program did amazing things for me. And I would love for you to have that same experience. And I'm here to help however I can. And, maybe 3 or 4 guys came and chatted with me after of like a team of 30 or something. Yeah. And one guy reached out to me on LinkedIn and he's like, hey, could I buy you coffee to like learn about what you do with Dark Horse? And I was like, there it is. Absolutely. Yeah, man. Let's
That's awesome.
You buy. Where should we meet? You know?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect spot to close out here, dude.
Yeah.
It was so much fun talking to you. This is great.
Thanks
you got
for
such an awesome story, man.
time.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. So if people don't know you and they want to find out more about Dark Horse Rowing, check out your stuff. What's the best place that we can send them?
darkhorserowing.com for anything formal, for all of our long form content. So educational stuff, youtube.com/darkhorserowing. And if you want to find my recent foray into short form content, come find us on Instagram, lightly on TikTok. But I've been having fun with Reels lately. So yeah, come follow us on Instagram. I think that's a good place currently. But then access to anything that we do, like if you want to get involved with the community and you want to jump in with programs, that'll be on darkhorserowing.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Shane, you're the best, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me, Michael.
Absolutely. So listeners, thank you so much. If you want to check out Shane's stuff, you know where to do so. I'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review, give it a thumbs up, all that good stuff. And if you want to get the inside scoop on all new episodes coming up, behind the scenes insights and free training resources, then you can join the Strength Connection private Facebook group now. Just go to Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection and join in. Also, don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.